My name is Emily, I'm 28, and on my birthday, my mom handed me a cake that was already half gone. Everyone was laughing, phones out, like this was the funniest thing they'd seen all year. She grinned and said she had pulled it out of the trash behind the store, like that was some kind of joke about how resourceful she was. I just stared at the smeared frosting and the empty space where someone else's slices had been, and for a second, I honestly felt like that missing half was me. That was the moment I stopped trying to pretend my family was normal. I had driven to that fancy burger place in the suburbs hoping, stupidly, that maybe this year would be different. That maybe they would see me as more than the struggling freelance daughter who never quite adds up. Instead, I got a garbage cake, a room full of people laughing at me, and one perfect opportunity. I didn't flip the table, I didn't scream or cry. I leaned down to my uncle's ear, kept my voice steady, and said 7 quiet words that wiped the smile right off his face. I told him I knew about the insurance. 2 weeks later, the same people who laughed at my trash cake were calling me nonstop, panicking in ways they never had when I was the one hurting. If your own mother turned your birthday into a joke and you were sitting on a secret that could blow up everything, would you swallow it to keep the peace? Or do what I did and finally light the match? The crazy part is, none of this started with the cake. It started a few days earlier when my cousin texted me, "Hey, your mom is planning something for your birthday. Don't freak out, just show up, okay?" Kara has always been the only one in my family who talks to me like I'm a real person, not a disappointment with Wi-Fi. So I believed her when she said it might actually be nice. I'd just finished another 12-hour day of freelance design work that barely covered rent and groceries. And the last thing I wanted was to sit at a table while everyone compared my life to my sister's. But Kara said the place was cute, a nice burger spot in the suburbs, and that my mom seemed excited. So I did what I always do. I pushed down the dread, put on makeup, and tried to convince myself that maybe this time they wouldn't make me feel like garbage. I drove out from my tiny apartment, past rows of neat little houses with perfectly trimmed lawns, and pulled into the parking lot of this trendy burger place with Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood tables, and an oversized American flag on the wall. It smelled like grilled bacon and overpriced truffle fries. When I walked in, my mom was already at the table, sitting straight-backed like a queen at the head of a long wooden table. Brittany was next to her, scrolling through Instagram, manicure on full display. My dad sat on the other side, shoulders slightly hunched, the human version of background noise. My uncle Mark, my mom's brother, was mid-story, talking way too loudly about a coworker who couldn't handle pressure and got fired. "Hey, birthday girl," my mom called out, standing up just enough to air kiss my cheek. "You look nice. Finally wearing something a little more feminine, huh?" I glanced down at my simple black dress and ankle boots. It wasn't anything special, but the way she said it made it feel like a backhanded compliment wrapped in a smile. "Hi," I said, sliding into the empty chair next to Kara. She squeezed my hand under the table for a second, her eyes saying what her mouth couldn't in front of everyone else. "I'm here. You're not alone." Brittany barely glanced up. "Oh my God, look at this reel." She laughed, turning her phone toward my mom. It was some influencer unboxing a luxury bag. "We should totally go shopping this weekend. There's this new mall. They have a Tesla showroom and everything." "Maybe for your promotion celebration," my mom said proudly. Can you believe it? She's only 25 and already moving up. Such a hard worker. My dad muttered something like, "Yeah, proud of you, kiddo," without looking up from his drink. "So, my Uncle Mark leaned back in his chair, eyeing me. "Still doing that art thing?" "Graphic design," I corrected, because apparently after 3 years he still refused to remember the actual words. "Yeah, I'm freelancing right now." "Freelancing." he repeated with a smirk, as if I'd just said imagining money into existence. Must be nice, working when you feel like it. When I was your age, I was doing overtime every week. No excuses. It's not really like that, I said, trying to keep my voice even. If I don't work, I don't get paid. Well, my mom cut in. Maybe if you stopped chasing these creative projects and just got a normal office job, you wouldn't be so stressed about bills. Stability isn't a bad word, you know. Kara shifted next to me, clearly uncomfortable. She's doing good, Aunt Susan, she said quietly. She sent me her portfolio. It's cool. That's cute, honey, my mom said without looking at her. But likes and little passion projects don't pay for retirement. Brittany laughed softly, not even bothering to hide it. At least she doesn't have to deal with office politics, she said. Corporate is brutal. Corporate is adulthood, my mom replied. Right, Mark? Exactly, he said, taking a swig of his beer. People today are soft. They want flexibility, remote work, mental health days. He made air quotes like the words physically offended him. Back in my day, you got hurt. You took your meds. You went back to work. I felt my jaw tighten at that sentence, for reasons no one at that table realized yet. I stabbed at my salad to keep my hands busy. My dad finally looked up long enough to say, "Let's just have a nice dinner, okay?" But he said it the way someone throws a blanket over a fire without checking if there's gasoline underneath. The waitress came by, cheerful and oblivious, asking if we needed anything. My mom ordered another round of drinks, making a point of saying, "It's her birthday. Put it on my card." You. She said it loud enough for two nearby tables to hear, like she was performing the role of generous, loving mother for an audience. I sat there listening to them talk about promotions, bonuses, vacations, all the ways their lives were moving forward, while mine was treated like a bad life choice they all had to tolerate. Have you ever sat in a room full of people who are supposed to love you and felt like the only way you exist is as a punchline? I kept telling myself I could survive one dinner, just smile, nod, pretend the little digs didn't land. I had no idea that the worst one was still coming, waiting in the kitchen, under a layer of chocolate frosting and melted candles. When the food finally came, I told myself it would get better once everyone's mouths were full. For a few minutes, it almost did. Burgers hit the table, fries, onion rings, my salad with grilled chicken that I'd ordered more out of guilt than desire. There was the clink of glasses, my mom raising hers and saying, "To Emily, may this be the year she finally finds some stability." Everyone chuckled like that was a sweet little joke, and I forced a smile, my throat tight. I counted down in my head. Just eat. Make small talk. Go home. Survive. I was halfway through pushing food around my plate when the lights dimmed slightly, and a cluster of servers started walking toward our table, one of them carrying something with sparklers sticking out of it. For a second, my chest lifted. Maybe they'd actually gotten me a real cake, something nice. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was my family trying. Then I saw it. It was a chocolate cake on a white platter, but only half of it was actually there. The other half was just gone. The frosting on the cut side was smeared and messy, like someone had dragged a knife through it in a hurry, and there were streaks of crumbs stuck to the empty part of the plate. There was one crooked candle shoved into the remaining half, already leaning to the side. The table erupted into laughter before the servers had even finished singing. "Oh my God, Mom!" Brittany wheezed, already pulling out her phone. "What is this?" My mom put a hand over her chest, pretending to look innocent and proud at the same time. "Isn't it hilarious?" she said. "I picked it out of the trash behind the store. Can you believe people throw away perfectly good cake?" The servers were trying so hard to stay polite, but even they looked confused. I just stared at the half-eaten cake, my brain struggling to catch up. "You got my birthday cake?" Out of the trash? I said slowly. Relax, she laughed, waving her hand. I'm kidding. Mostly. It was from the discount section. Someone returned it or something. It's still fine. We're not picky, right? My Uncle Mark slapped the table, laughing so hard his face turned red. Now that is what I call saving money, he said. A trash cake. That's a good story. Brittany was already filming, the camera pointed at me, waiting to catch my reaction. Guys, look, she said into her phone. Mom literally found Em's birthday cake in the trash. Say hi, Em. She zoomed in on my face like I was part of some prank content. My cheeks burned. The whole restaurant wasn't looking, but it felt like they were. Somewhere behind me, a kid at another table yelled, "You, trash cake!" And his parents shushed him, but the words stuck. Kara shifted in her seat beside me. That's not funny, she muttered, too quiet for anyone but me to hear. It's just a joke, my mom insisted, still laughing. You know we love you. Come on, blow out your candle. Make a wish. Maybe wish for a real job. The table exploded again. I looked at the candle, at the half cake, at the smear of chocolate on the plate where someone else's fingers had probably been. I thought about the months I'd spent juggling invoices, late payments, maxed out credit cards. I thought about the times my mom had said, "If you'd just listened to me and gone into something practical, you wouldn't be in this mess." I thought about Mark's little speech earlier, about getting hurt, taking your meds, going back to work, and the way he'd said it with that smug, knowing tone. Something inside me finally snapped, but it didn't explode the way I expected. It went cold. I leaned in, blew out the candle in one breath, and smiled. Not for the camera, not for them. For me. Aren't you going to have a slice? Brittany asked, still recording. I'm good, I said. My voice sounded oddly calm, like it belonged to someone older and tired of pretending. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. Whoa, where are you going? My mom said, her laughter faltering. We're just getting started. I picked up my bag and stepped around my chair. I've had enough, I said. Then I turned toward my Uncle Mark. He was still grinning, but there was this flicker in his eyes, the tiniest hint of nerves, like he remembered saying something he shouldn't have in front of me once upon a time. I leaned down so my mouth was right next to his ear. The table quieted just enough that I could hear the sizzle of the kitchen and the low country song playing over the speakers. I know about the insurance, I whispered. 7 words. That's all it took. His body went stiff. The smile slid off his face like someone had pulled the plug. His hand, still wrapped around his beer bottle, suddenly tightened. What? He said, barely moving his lips. I straightened up, looked him dead in the eye, and gave him the smallest, fakest smile I've ever managed. Enjoy the cake, I said. Then I turned and walked away, feeling their confusion chasing me down the aisle between the tables, my mom calling my name, Brittany asking if she'd gotten that on video. I didn't stop. I walked out of the restaurant, into the cool night air, my heart pounding but my mind clearer than it had been in years. 2 weeks later, the same uncle who laughed the loudest at my trash cake would be blowing up my phone, begging me to talk, acting like I was the one holding a grenade. And maybe I was. Because if you're wondering what insurance I was talking about, and why those 7 words scared him more than any screaming match ever could, you have to go back with me to 4 months before that dinner, when I was just trying to help my mom clean out her old laptop. 4 months before that dinner, I was sitting at my mom's kitchen table, staring at a pile of old electronics she'd dragged out of the hall closet. There was a tangle of cords, an ancient printer, and the laptop she'd been complaining about for months. It's too slow, and the fan sounds like a jet engine, she said, dropping it in front of me. Can you wipe it or whatever so I can donate it? You're good with this tech stuff. I'm not, really, but I'm better than she is. so I opened the lid and waited for it to wheeze itself awake. The fan roared, the screen flickered, and eventually her cluttered desktop appeared, a graveyard of random folders and screenshots. "Just make sure you don't delete my medical stuff," she added, pouring herself coffee. "All my insurance documents are on there somewhere." I nodded, because this was the kind of thing she always trusted me with, the boring behind-the-scenes tasks that made her life easier but never counted as real work. I started sorting through files, dragging photos and old recipes to an external drive. Then I opened her email, looking for anything important that needed saving before I wiped the whole thing. That's when I saw the folder. It was labeled Medical Claims, with a little star next to it. Nothing weird about that, except it had way more unread messages than anything else. I clicked it, thinking I'd just sort by date, save the latest stuff, move on. The subject lines blurred together at first. Claim numbers, policy updates, reminders. Then one thread caught my eye. Accident documentation. Urgent. It was from about a year ago. I remembered my Uncle Mark talking about some car accident, how he'd hurt his back and had to take time off work. How my mom had been so stressed helping him with paperwork. I clicked on it. The first email was from my mom to Mark. She'd forwarded a hospital invoice, and under it she wrote, "I edited the amounts like we talked about. This should push it over the threshold." My stomach tightened. I scrolled down. There were attachments, PDF bills with numbers circled and handwritten notes in the margins. Some lines were clearly changed, like someone had typed over the original totals. Another email from Mark said, "You're a lifesaver. Once this goes through, we're set. No one needs to know the difference." My mom replied, "That's what family is for. Just make sure you act like you're still in pain if they call." I sat there staring at the screen, the words blurring for a second. I clicked through more messages. There were emails to the insurance company with carefully worded explanations, photos of Mark's car with the same dent shown from 3 different angles, like they'd been staged. One email from the insurance rep confirmed the payout amount, around $150,000. I leaned back in my chair. $150,000. For an accident that, if these emails were real, was at least partially fake. I scrolled further down the thread and saw a message from my mom to someone else in the family, my Aunt Laura. She'd written something about how the family pool is tighter this year, and we'll have to wait on some of your requests until things settle. I remembered hearing little bits of that drama at a barbecue, Laura complaining that the insurance wasn't covering what she thought it would. My mom had brushed it off, said something about policies changing and nothing we can do. But here I was, looking at proof that a big chunk of money had gone straight to Mark. A few weeks after those emails, there were photos. My uncle grinning in front of a brand new RV, holding up a beer. Another one of him and his wife on some scenic overlook captioned, "Finally living a little." My mom had replied with heart emojis and, "You deserve it after everything." I felt sick. I wasn't a lawyer, but even I knew this wasn't just bending the rules. This was lying. This was stealing. It wasn't just from some faceless company either. It was from a system that other people in our own family relied on, people like Laura who'd been told there wasn't enough coverage for what she needed. I scrolled back up to the top of the thread, reread the part where my mom said, "No one needs to know the difference." Apparently, I wasn't supposed to be part of no one. I sat there for a long time, the laptop warm under my palms, the kitchen clock ticking way too loudly. Part of me wanted to march into the living room and shove the screen in her face. Ask her how she could call me irresponsible when she was doing this. Ask her if she realized that the woman who always brought extra side dishes to holidays because she didn't want to be a burden had been quietly cut out so Mark could buy himself a rolling vacation house. but another part of me froze. I knew exactly how that conversation would go. She'd say I misunderstood, that everyone does this, that it wasn't a big deal, that I was dramatic, ungrateful, trying to start problems. She'd twist it until I was the one apologizing. So instead, I did the only thing I could think of that didn't feel like total surrender. I took screenshots. Every email, every attachment, every confirmation from the insurance company. I saved them to a private folder, then to my own cloud. Then I carefully closed it all, dragged my mom's desktop into neat little folders, backed up what she actually needed, and eventually wiped the laptop like she'd asked. When she came back into the kitchen, I handed it to her and said, "You're good. It's ready." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "What would I do without you?" I remember thinking, probably not commit insurance fraud so sloppily, but I didn't say it. I shoved it down, the way I shoved down every time she made a comment about my career or my life choices. For months, I carried that secret around like a heavy rock in my chest. I told myself it wasn't my business, that confronting her would only blow up my relationship with my family and change nothing. I told myself that if I opened my mouth, everyone would blame me, not the people who lied. And then, on my birthday, she put a half-eaten cake in front of me and turned my life into a joke for 30 seconds of laughter and a couple of Instagram stories. That was the moment something shifted. I realized they'd been perfectly fine using me as a shield, a scapegoat, a punchline. I wasn't protecting my family by staying quiet. I was protecting the people hurting us. So when I whispered, "I know about the insurance," into Mark's ear, I wasn't just being petty. I was letting him know the rock I'd been carrying wasn't going to stay buried forever. 2 weeks after that dinner, when my phone lit up with his name and my mom's again and again, their voices shaking, suddenly terrified of consequences they'd never imagined for themselves, I knew the secret wasn't just mine anymore. And that was when the real fallout started. For almost 2 full weeks after that dinner, I ignored every call from my mom and every text that started with, "We need to talk." At first it was easy. I put my phone face down, buried myself in work, went on long walks with my headphones turned up too loud. I told myself I was just taking space, that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for walking away from a room where I was the punchline. But the longer the silence went on, the more their messages shifted from annoyed to anxious. The first time I actually picked up, it was my mom. "Emily," she said before I could even say hello, her voice too bright and shaky. "What did you say to your uncle at the restaurant?" "No, how are you?" No apology, just straight to damage control. I leaned back on my couch, staring at the ceiling. "You mean when I told him I knew about the insurance?" I said. There was a tiny inhale on the other end, sharp and fast. "You shouldn't joke about things like that," she snapped, then immediately softened her tone like she'd caught herself. "He's very upset. You scared him." I almost laughed. "I scared him?" I said. "That's interesting." "You don't understand how these things work," she said. "It was a complicated situation. We just helped him through a tough time. It's not what you think, okay?" That was her favorite line whenever she got caught doing something she couldn't easily justify. "It's not what you think." "So, you didn't fake medical bills to get a six-figure payout and then tell Aunt Laura there wasn't enough coverage for her?" I asked. There was a beat of silence. "You're being very dramatic," she said, slipping into that slow, measured tone she used when she wanted to paint me as irrational. "Insurance companies deny people all the time. Your uncle was genuinely hurt. There were gray areas with the paperwork, that's all. We could have lost everything. I did what I had to do to protect this family." I felt my teeth grind together. "You did what you had to do to help Mark buy a vacation on wheels," I said. "And you lied to your own sister about it. But sure, I'm the dramatic one." Do you have any idea what you're risking by throwing around words like fraud? She hissed. If this gets back to the wrong people, they could investigate. They could. It could destroy us. I stared at the wall, at a cheap framed print I designed for myself because I couldn't afford real art. Funny, I said. You weren't worried about destroying anything when you were telling Aunt Laura there wasn't enough in the family pool for her treatments. She started to say my name like a warning. Emily. But I hung up. My hands were shaking, not because I'd yelled, but because I hadn't. I'd just laid the facts out, and she'd twisted them into an emotional plea, the way she always did. A few hours later, Brittany called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "What are you doing?" she demanded the second I answered. No hello, no preamble. Mom is freaking out, Uncle Mark is freaking out, Aunt Laura is asking questions. Why would you say something like that at dinner? Because it's true, I said. And I'm tired of pretending I don't know what they did. You're going to blow up this entire family over something that's already done? She said. Do you want Mom to have a breakdown? Do you want Uncle Mark to go to jail? Is that what you want? It amazed me how fast they jumped from, "It's nothing, you're overreacting," to, "You're going to send him to prison," in the same day. I didn't do anything except stop protecting them, I replied. If they're scared, maybe they should be. She made a frustrated noise. You've always been like this, she said. You can't just let things go. You have to make everything a moral crisis. This is real life, Emily. People cut corners. That's how it works. People cut corners? I repeated. Cool. I'll remember that next time Mom calls me irresponsible for not having a retirement plan yet. Maybe I should just fake an accident. You're not funny, she snapped. You're ruining everything. Mom's crying all the time. Aunt Laura called me asking why there's a gap in the insurance records. I didn't even know what to say. Tell her to talk to Mom, I said. Or Mark. I'm done covering. She was quiet for a second. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. You really sent her something? Not yet, I said. But I will if she asks. Brittany cursed under her breath. You are going to tear this family apart, she whispered. And when it all blows up, don't act like you didn't light the fuse. I could have argued. I could have reminded her that I didn't create a fake injury or adjust dollar amounts on medical bills. Instead, I just said, maybe the fuse was there long before I picked up a match, and ended the call. That night, Kara texted me a link to a TikTok. It was my Uncle Mark, filming himself in his kitchen, leaning on the counter like some bargain bin motivational speaker. The caption was something like, "Real talk about jealousy in families," with a bunch of hashtags. In the video, he talked vaguely about younger relatives who can't stand seeing other people win, and people who would rather drag you down than work hard themselves. The comments were split. Half of them were strangers calling out, "Okay, boomer," the other half cheering him on. I watched it 3 times, my jaw clenched. Then Kara texted, "He posted this after Mom told him you know. He thinks you won't do anything. He thinks you're scared." Another message followed a minute later. "If Aunt Laura asks you directly, tell her the truth. She deserves that much." The next day, Laura did call. Her voice was calm in that way people get when they're trying very hard not to show they're upset. "Emily," she said, "I heard something concerning. Kara mentioned there might be some irregularities with how your mother and Mark handled a claim last year. I don't want drama. I just want to know if I have all the information." I sat there with my phone pressed to my ear, staring at the folder of screenshots on my laptop. "What did Mom tell you when you asked about coverage?" I asked. Laura sighed. She said the policy changed, that there wasn't enough to go around, that the family fund had been used up on Mark's accident and there was nothing she could do. I clicked open one of the screenshots, the one where my mom had written, "That's what family is for." No one needs to know the difference. My throat tightened. She didn't tell you about the extra payout, I said. She didn't tell you about the RV. There was a long silence. Emily, Laura said quietly, do you have proof? I looked at the screen, at the pile of emails, the PDFs, the confirmation numbers. Yeah, I said. I do. She hesitated. Would you send it to me? She asked. I'm not asking you to lie for me. I'm asking you not to lie for them. Something in me relaxed at that. She wasn't trying to guilt me, or call me dramatic, or tell me to think of the family name. She was just asking for the truth. I'll send everything, I said. And I did. Email after email, attachment after attachment, all the little details they'd counted on no one ever seeing. When I hit send, I felt like I'd dropped a weight I'd been lugging around for months. I knew it wouldn't land quietly. People think the hardest part of exposing a lie is the moment you speak up. But honestly, the hardest part is the waiting. Waiting to see who believes you. Waiting to see who turns on you. Waiting to see which people you thought were family decide you're the real problem. Over the next few days, my mom's texts turned into long paragraphs about betrayal and airing dirty laundry. My uncle didn't call, but he changed his TikTok bio to some quote about snakes in the grass, which would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Kara and Laura, though, kept checking in. We're with you, Kara wrote, no matter how loud they get. And every time my phone lit up with another angry message from someone else, I reminded myself of one thing. I hadn't ruined a good family. I'd just stopped letting a bad one hide behind the word. When Aunt Laura said she was going to talk to a lawyer and report everything to the insurance company, I don't think any of us really understood what that meant in practical terms. At first, it was just quiet. Too quiet. My mom stopped calling for a couple of days, which was unnerving in its own way. Brittany posted a couple of throwback selfies with captions about family first, which felt like subtweets aimed at me. But other than that, it was like everyone collectively held their breath. Then the group chat started. My family has this WhatsApp group with a cheesy name and a photo from some barbecue years ago, where everyone is pretending we're closer than we actually are. Most days, it's just birthday messages, memes, and logistical stuff about who's bringing what to holidays. One afternoon, about a week after I sent Laura the screenshots, my phone blew up with notifications from that chat. The first message was from my mom. We all need to be very careful what we say about Mark's accident. Some people are confused about what happened. Then Mark jumped in. There's nothing to be careful about because nothing was done wrong. If anyone is spreading lies, they need to stop. Now. A cousin I barely talked to replied with a confused emoji. Someone else sent, "What's going on?" That's when Laura spoke up. "What's going on," she typed, "is that I was told there wasn't enough coverage for my treatments because the family insurance pool was drained, but it looks like a large payout went somewhere else. I have emails that contradict what I was told." The chat went dead for a full minute. You could practically feel everyone's eyes widen through the screen. My mom finally responded, "Laura, this isn't the place to discuss private matters. We can handle this within the family." Then Laura sent one more message. "We had the lawyer look over everything. We're filing a fraud report with the insurance company. They'll be in touch." I wanted everyone to hear that directly from me. After that, people stopped typing publicly. The 3 dots would appear like someone was about to say something, then disappear. No one wanted to pick a side in front of everyone else. A few minutes later, I got a separate text from my cousin Riley, one of Laura's kids. "Just so you know, we didn't mention your name. We just said we got info from inside the family, but if they guess, they guess. We're done covering." It was the first time I felt like I wasn't the only one willing to stand in the line of fire. The next wave came from the insurance company and lawyers. I wasn't directly involved, but I heard about it in fragments. There were calls to hospitals and clinics to verify invoices, requests for original records, questions about dates and treatments. They asked for phone records, bank transfers, anything that could show whether Mark's injury lined up with the story he'd sold them. Mark tried to play it cool at first, posting another vague TikTok about haters and people who can't stand to see you blessed. But his videos started going up less and less. Then one night my dad called me, which was rare enough that I stared at the screen for a full minute before answering. "Hey, Dad," I said. He sighed, and I could hear the TV droning in the background. "Hey, kiddo," he replied. "You got a minute?" I walked over to my window, looked out at the parking lot and the orange glow of the streetlights. "Yeah," I said. "What's up?" There was a long pause. "Your mom is not doing well," he finally said. "She's scared. Mark's scared. The insurance people are digging through everything. Lawyers are calling. It's bad." I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. "I honestly didn't know," he added quietly, "about the details. I knew Mark got a settlement, but I don't know what I thought. That it was legit, I guess. Your mom handled the paperwork. I didn't ask questions." I believed him, and that hurt in a different way. He hadn't known, but he also hadn't wanted to know. "You okay?" he asked after a moment. That simple question almost broke me more than all the yelling and gaslighting had. "I'm better," I said. "Since the dinner, since I stopped pretending. I'm mad, but I'm not surprised anymore. That helps." He exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the cake, for standing there and letting them make you feel small, for all the times I stayed quiet because it was easier. I should have said something." I swallowed. "You still could," I said softly. "If you want to." Another long pause. "I don't know what I can fix," he admitted. "But I don't want you thinking I'm against you. I'm not. I just froze." "You don't have to fix it," I told him. "You just have to stop pretending it's fine." A few days later, my mom showed up at my apartment. No warning, just a pounding on the door that made my stomach drop. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, hair a little messier than usual, mascara smudged under her eyes. For a second, I thought about not opening it. Then I unlocked the deadbolt and cracked it just enough to see her clearly. "We need to talk," she said, voice trembling. "About what?" I asked. "About the fact that your aunt is trying to send your uncle to jail," she snapped. The shaky, vulnerable act vanished in an instant. "About the fact that you handed over private emails like you were some kind of whistleblower." "I didn't send them to the internet," I replied. "I sent them to the person you lied to." "We didn't lie," she protested, then caught herself. "We simplified. It was a complicated situation. The system is unfair. Your uncle was hurting. We just—" "You changed numbers on medical bills," I cut in. "You told the insurance company one story and your own sister another. You used a family pool as an excuse while you were funneling money into Mark's RV fund. That's not simplifying. That's fraud." She flinched at the word. "Stop saying that," she hissed. "You don't know what it's like to be responsible for everyone. To have a brother who can't stay on his feet, a family that depends on you, bills coming from every direction." I did what I had to do. "No," I said. "You did what you chose to do. And every time I made a choice you didn't like, you called it irresponsible. You don't get to hide behind family now." Her eyes filled with tears. "They're talking about pressing charges," she said. "Real charges. Mark could lose everything. I could lose everything. Do you want that on your conscience?" I felt a strange calm settle over me. "You already had that risk on your conscience when you hit send on that first email," I said. "This isn't happening because I told the truth. It's happening because you lied." For a second, she looked like she might push past me, but I blocked the doorway with my body. It was the first time in my life I'd ever physically stopped her from coming into my space. She stared at me, shocked. "You're really going to shut me out?" she whispered. "After everything I've done for you?" "You've done a lot," I agreed. "Some of it good. Some of it… this. I'm not saying you're a monster. I'm saying I'm not going to help you pretend this never happened." Her face crumpled. "You're choosing them over me," she said. "I'm choosing me," I replied. For once. She stood there for a moment longer, like she was waiting for me to take it back, to step aside and let her in. Let her cry on my couch and spin this into another story where she was the victim and I was the unreasonable daughter. I didn't move. Eventually, she dropped her gaze, turned, and walked down the hall. I closed the door, locked it, and slid down onto the floor, shaking. Setting that boundary didn't feel triumphant, it felt terrifying. But underneath the fear, there was something else. Relief. In the weeks that followed, the investigation ramped up. I heard from Laura that the insurance company had opened a formal fraud case. They requested original documentation, pulled security footage from the hospital, cross-checked Mark's supposed time off work with his actual movements. It was slow, boring, methodical work, the exact opposite of the messy, emotional drama my family preferred. While they dealt with the fallout, I started dealing with my own life. I updated my portfolio, polished my resume, and applied for full-time design jobs at agencies in the city. I signed up for a yoga class at the community center down the street, mostly to get out of my head and back into my body. I even booked a couple of therapy sessions through a sliding scale clinic, something I'd been telling myself I couldn't afford for years. Every time my phone buzzed with a new angry message from a relative, I let it sit. Every time it buzzed with a text from Kara or Laura, I answered. I started to see, in real time, which connections in my life were built on control and which were built on actual care. Somewhere between job applications and sun salutations, I realized something. The worst parts of what my family was going through were happening because, for once, they were being held to the same standards they used to measure me. They used to tell me that choices have consequences, that life isn't fair, that I needed to take responsibility. Now those words were boomeranging back at them from lawyers, investigators, and a sister who refused to stay quiet. And as messed up as it sounds, that finally felt like justice. 6 months after that birthday dinner, I was sitting at my desk in a bright, open office downtown, adjusting the spacing on a logo for a new client, when my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Laura. "We got the final decision." My stomach flipped, even though I wasn't the one on trial. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "Do you want to call?" She sent back, "I'll send you the summary. You deserve to see it." A few minutes later, an email dropped into my inbox. I opened it, and there it was, in black and white. The insurance company had officially concluded that Mark and my mom had submitted false information, altered invoices, and misrepresented the extent of his injuries. They weren't using gentle language anymore. It was fraud, plain and simple. Mark had already agreed to a settlement to avoid a full-blown court case. He had to repay the entire $150,000, plus penalties that pushed the total close to $200,000. His employer, who'd somehow ignored a year of back pain while he took road trips, cut him loose the second they heard. Professional misconduct, violation of company ethics, immediate termination. The RV he'd been so proud of went back to the bank. His wife filed for divorce not long after the settlement became public record. "I didn't sign up to be married to a scammer," she supposedly told my mom, according to family gossip. My mom didn't get off clean either. She wasn't hit as hard as Mark, but she was still listed as a knowing participant. She got slapped with a $10,000 fine and a note in the report about her role in document preparation and submission. For someone who cared more about her reputation than her retirement account, that was the real hit. Word got around their little community faster than any official letter could travel. The woman who used to brag at book club about how honest values were the core of her parenting suddenly found herself being avoided at the grocery store. People she'd known for years stopped making eye contact. The chair of her volunteer committee graciously suggested she take a break from leadership until things settled. She had to sell her luxury SUV to cover legal fees and fines, trading it in for a boring, modest sedan that didn't match the persona she'd worked so hard to curate. Brittany's Instagram went from outfit of the day and brunch photos to vague quotes about starting over and keeping your circle small. No more videos of family dinners, no more posts of my mom beaming in front of expensive restaurants. It was like they were trying to scrub the internet clean of the version of themselves I'd grown up resenting. Meanwhile, my life got quieter and better. I landed that agency job, the one I thought was a long shot. Full-time, benefits, actual coworkers who said things like, "Your work is really strong," instead of, "When are you going to get a real job?" I moved into a slightly bigger apartment with windows that faced trees instead of a parking lot. Kara helped me assemble IKEA furniture while we ate takeout on the floor and laughed about how my mom would have hated the mismatched chairs. Laura started sending me little updates that weren't just about the case. Photos of her dog, a new plant she bought, the way she was finally scheduling her own appointments without having to ask anyone's permission. One afternoon, a package showed up at my door with no return name, just an address I recognized as Laura's. Inside was a small chocolate cake from a local bakery, perfectly intact, no slices missing. On top, in neat white frosting, were 3 words: "You deserve better." I stood at my counter staring at it, my throat tight. It was such a simple thing, but it felt like someone had reached back into that birthday dinner and rewired the ending. I took a picture, not for Instagram, just for me, and then I cut myself the first slice. My dad came by a few days later with a plant he claimed he picked because the lady at the store said even you can't kill it. He looked older, a little smaller than I remembered, like the last few months had worn him down too. We sat on my couch, the TV on low in the background, and he said, "I read the report. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't ugly, but I'm glad you told the truth." I believed him. For once, he wasn't trying to smooth things over. He wasn't asking me to forgive her or let it go for the sake of the family. He was just sitting in the mess with me, acknowledging that it was real. As for my mom, she sent a few messages over the next month. Long, rambling ones about how she'd done everything out of love, how she couldn't believe her own daughter had turned on her, how she was the real victim because everyone is judging me based on one mistake. I didn't respond. I thought I'd feel guilty ignoring her. I thought the silence would keep me up at night. But it didn't. I slept better than I had in years. Here's the thing. No one tells you about finally standing up to your family. The fallout is brutal, but the freedom is real. I didn't expose what they did because I wanted to watch them suffer. I did it because I realized that every time I let their behavior slide, I was agreeing that my dignity was worth less than their comfort. I used to think keeping the peace meant swallowing my anger and letting myself be the joke at my own birthday dinner. Now I know peace without honesty isn't peace. It's just control with nicer lighting. I'm not naive. I know there are people in my family who will always tell the story like I was the one who destroyed everything. Maybe, in their version, I am the villain. But in mine, I'm just the girl who finally stopped letting other people write her as the disappointment. So that's what happened after the half-eaten cake and the 7 quiet words I whispered into my uncle's ear. They lost their money, their image, and their comfort. I lost a version of my family I probably never really had to begin with, and gained a life where I can look at myself in the mirror without flinching. If you were sitting at that table, with a trash cake in front of you and a secret in your back pocket, would you have kept protecting them? Or would you have done what I did and let the truth burn its way out?